This is Lightning Power Lunch, presented by Reef Rum on the Lightning Audio Network with Dave Mishkin and Greg Linnelli.
I think we got what we wanted, which was effort, compete, and some passion. You know, at the end of the day, things got to change when you don't win in the first round, you know, in a few consecutive years, right? Part of that is expanding our limits a little bit as players, right? So maybe we didn't love how the New York game went, or maybe we didn't love, you know, the how it ended up with Vancouver. But that's besides the point. That's not why we did this today. It's not a punishment deal. It's more about it, like becoming the team we want to become in April and May and June, right? And part of that is having to get used to playing like this schedule is a gauntlet, right? And you have to build up the stamina to compete come March, because our schedule in March is a gauntlet. So, you know, that's kind of the idea, is what you want to get is expansion of their limits, because the body can get used to whatever you want it to get used to. So that's kind of what this was.
Dan Hinote talking about the schedule.
Yeah, I love hearing Dan Hinote. I mean, I mentioned, you know, he and I go back to his first year pro. He was 20 years old at the time, a rookie in the AHL, member of the Avalanche organization, and Bob Hartley was our coach. So they overlapped by 1 year in Hershey. Hartley was only our coach in Hershey for 2 years. The first year, Hershey won the Calder Cup. Hinote was still a junior player at that point.
Yep.
So the next year, Hinote's first year pro was Hartley's last year with the Bears, and then he got promoted to Colorado the next year. And Hinote was a little bit of I'm not sure that he was a can't miss prospect. He wasn't a high draft pick. You know, you come in at 20, you're still learning the game. And it was about halfway through that year, Bob Hartley said, I think it may have been a one-on-one conversation we had too. He said to me, there's one guy who I have no doubt is going to get to the NHL on this team this year, and that's Dan Hinote. He knew. And within a couple of years, Hinote was up and played for Hartley in Colorado and was a part of the Avalanche's 2001 Stanley Cup team. But it's interesting to hear him with his coach's hat on, right? Because I know he's been a coach for a number of years with different teams. He was in Columbus. He was in Nashville. He was in Colorado's AHL affiliate with them before he joined the Lightning. But you can hear how intelligent he is about the game and the kind of language that he uses, like, you know, pushing yourself. It's not surprising that he spent a year with Army, right? Mm-hmm. Like he was at the you know, West Point. They had a hockey team. He ended up moving on because he wanted to play junior hockey. But he's got that kind of demeanor to him, right? Very, like, not the Robert Duvall, you know, character in that movie where, you know, my way or the highway. Not that part, but just the mindset that I think you see sometimes with people who have been exposed to the military life, or at least, you know, the academy.
Not a lot of excuse making things.
No, I mean, that's kind of what we're talking about. Yeah. But at the same time, just like one of the friendliest people that you would meet, like always has a smile on his face, positive. I mean, Coop's talked about that, how much, you know, energy he brings to the ice. And, you know, if you're ever at a Lightning practice, if you have a chance to be at a Lightning practice, he's usually skating around, talking with players, big smile on his face. Even in that clip, you know, he's talking about some tough subjects, but he's still smiling, you know, while he's saying it. So I'm really glad that, you know, he's found a career still in hockey now that his playing days are over. I'm really glad he's with the Lightning organization.
It's that energy that's contagious sometimes, you know, smile on your face, happy to be doing what you're doing. And it's a privilege to be a part of this process. So we should get him on the show at some point, right? Just to talk to him a little bit. I
haven't actually told you and Steve, but on the last road trip, Brian Briesman was on the road trip, and I was talking to him a little bit about, you know, how the Lightning might be able to help us get some guests on Power Lunch. And we'll explore that. Maybe we can get some assistant coaches. Sure. Some of the guests we get, including our guest today.
Yeah.
He'll be on tomorrow's block party. Well, we know the block party. Block party is like the yellow brick road. Like everybody who enters Lightning Land takes that path. They end up on the block party. Our show's a little different. We're kind of locked in at a certain time, and we're 5 days a week. Block parties once a week. But yes, we will try and get some assistant coaches. But we did get a guest scheduled for today, and he'll be joining us soon. That is Matt Loughlin, the longtime radio voice of the Devils, to give us the other side of the red line perspective. Devils have had a great start to the year, and they've done it in the face of a lot of injuries. Yes, the Jack Hughes injury is a prominent one and a recent one, but they've gone quite a ways this year doing well without some of their regulars. So sounds like the Lightning are kind of sort of getting healthy, but maybe not completely getting healthy, because we got word today that Max Crozier is going on IR. Apparently he got injured a little bit in the Sunday game, and it got worse at practice yesterday. So he's going to have to miss a week. And the Lightning have called up Steven Santini, a former Devil, and Declan Carlile, who was a guy we thought we would see at some point. He's another one of these guys that had a very good training camp in preseason for the Lightning. And Rob Zettler met with the media this morning and said that both Cirelli and James are in tonight. Noticeable in what he didn't say, though, is that I'm guessing we're still not seeing Hedman, McDonough, Pontus Holmberg, and obviously Crozier now on the injured list too. And Chernak got dinged up a little bit in the game on Sunday, was able to finish. And, they called up 2 defensemen. We'll see if he's able to play tonight. But they had an optional skate this morning, which, as you can see from my background, if you're watching in the video stream, I did not go to. I've gotten wise in my older years, Greg. I am battling a little something. Maybe the fans heard that over the weekend.
It happens, right?
And there was a time where I'd be like, have to go in. And I'm like, you know what? Just take care of yourself. And I'm doing the show from here. I'll be in for the game tonight, but trying to get as healthy as I can, as quickly as I can.
Technology.
With age comes wisdom, right?
Yeah,
yes,
right.
And that too.
Before that might not have been different, but you can do the show from your house.
And it's amazing that we can get this information not being there too. I mean, it is
incredible.
Nice to be there. You can talk to the players, but we got all the information that we needed from the people on scene. So thank you to them.
You feel for Crozier, just has not been able to get on track. I mean, that is tough, but. The flip side of that is, Cirelli and James likely returning to the lineup. That's going to add a jolt.
Huge jolt. You got 2 centers coming in.
And honestly, 2 of your better performing offensive players this year. I mean, Cirelli scoring the goals, and James has brought that dynamic element to his game that has given whichever line he's been on another layer to what they can do offensively. So
yes.
I'm not expecting the Lightning to go out and score 6 goals tonight, but I think it helps in terms of driving play, pushing back. Maybe it helps the power play to some degree.
And maybe setting the lineup a little bit too.
Yeah.
I mean, when the Lightning were going really well at the end of October into the beginning of November, I know that sometimes they went 11-7. In fact, they went 11-7 more than they didn't, I think, during that stretch of time. But the lines were kind of stable, even with the 11-7. And I think that helped them. So we'll see if we get some. I mean, without Holmberg, you're not going to have Gord, Gergensons, and Holmberg. And I think that was a very effective line. But, the Finley, Sabourin, Douglas line gave the Lightning good minutes, aside from the penalties that Sabourin took 2 on Sunday. But when they were playing 5-on-5, they gave the Lightning good minutes in both those games. So maybe that will stay a line. We'll see. I mean, the Lightning sent Tkachuk down. So that's one roster spot that has been opened up for either Cirelli or James. We'll see what they do with the second one.
Look, I don't want to go back and forth as to being completely surprised that a forward who is, the 13th, 14th, 15th forward on this team is sent down. But I thought Tkachuk looked good. I'm not saying that he deserved another month with the team. I don't know if I'm surprised. They
had him playing center, Greg, and they've got 2 centers back.
That part, and that's probably why. But he is versatile, and if this is basically, somebody who you're just kind of looking for people who can come in and play well, it doesn't matter what position. Tkachuk would have been somebody I would have looked to keep just because I was intrigued by what he brought. That being said, I know you can't keep everybody, so I get it. You have to make some tough decisions. I think for Tkachuk, hopefully he goes down there and continues to perform because he did nothing from a negative perspective that, I would look at and say, keep him down there. I don't think he deserves to be up here with the big club. He showed well. He did what you're supposed to do when you get those call-ups and you're kind of on the periphery.
I would agree. John Cooper called him one of their best forwards or players in the loss to the Rangers. And then Coop singled him out as one of the guys who really helped on the penalty kill in the game at Florida, which was a big part of how the Lightning were able to win that game. I think Matt Loughlin is ready.
He is.
Optional skate. Look at him. Handsome
What's
man.
Up, fellas?
And branding, too. I've started, now that I'm in front of a camera, Matt, you can see I try and brand. I have a Lightning hoodie on. You have your Devils jacket. So,
and I said as I came into the studio, I said, I'm a guest in someone's house, and I don't necessarily have to wear this, but it's a little chilly in the rink. I could have taken it off, but this is who I am, and this is who I work for, so I guess it's appropriate.
Well, it's nice that they equipped you with something to wear in the cold rinks. I'm guessing you didn't pull out your credit card for that. I hope not.
Never. If it's free, it's for me. You know the old saying.
Well, let's get into the Devils. This has been a very interesting start for New Jersey, to me, for three reasons. First of all, the record is outstanding, especially at home. Second of all, they've done it while dealing with numerous and significant injuries that predated the weird Jack Hughes injury. I mean, you've been dealing with a lot of players out of the lineup and still succeeding. And then metrically, I actually felt that the numbers would be better than what I saw. You guys are underwater 5-on-5, great power play, but make me understand that. Like, how is this team doing as well as it's doing without so many significant regulars and metrically doing okay, but not where you would expect them to be based on their standings position?
Yeah, no, Dave, you're absolutely right. 5-on-5 is the area where they want to improve. They've been carried by their special teams and their goaltending. So they win 2 out of 3. Sheldon Keefe was talking yesterday after practice about, 2 out of 3 facets of the game. And if you can win 2 out of those 3, that gives you a good chance of winning. So that's helped. They've gotten some good contributions from some of their depth players. I think 2 surprises. One definitely a surprise because he was unknown. Arseny Gritsuk has stepped in and has played very, very well, and so he solidified the top 9. Now he'll be more top 6 with the injury to Jack Hughes, and he'll be given a chance. And Shimo Nemitz, who was the 2nd overall pick in 2022, so the bloodlines, if you will, were good. He just hadn't really shown it for a variety of reasons, some injury, some disappointment with going down to the farm last year. But now as his confidence has grown, as he's been healthy, he's really been able to pick up some of the slack on the blue line for the guys who have been out hurt. So those things have kind of worked in their favor. But I agree with you. If the 5-on-5 doesn't get up a little bit more, and they weren't a great 5-on-5 team last year, if that doesn't improve a little bit, we may see a little bit of the what I call meandering that the Devils had last year after a great start. Beginning in January, they were kind of like win 1, lose 1, win 2, lose 1, lose 2, win 1 the rest of the way.
It's interesting. There was a lot of talk here, Matt, about, certain Lightning players that have moved on from the organization that maybe the team would love to have back. And, one of the players that sometimes comes up, you have to think about it a little bit, but he was such a big part of what the Lightning accomplished over the last handful of years was Andre Palat. Just glancing at the stats, obviously off to a slow start, but what's his impact been this year, and what do you make of what he's been able to bring to the Devils over the last couple?
So first off, one of my favorite guys. I mean, as soon as he came in, we started to see all the things that the Tampa fans and Tampa management and players saw. True pro, prepared, diligent, hard worker, hard on the ice, et cetera, et cetera. Unfortunately, he's victimized by his paycheck, if you will, because people look at what he's being paid and saying, oh, he's not earning it because he's not scoring. And I agree you would want more out of him, and he would tell you the same thing if he was sitting next to us. But what he has brought in terms of, and it started in his very first year, been there, here's how we're going to do it here, helped the Devils immeasurably in that first year getting to the postseason for the board work, the checking, the responsible play in his own end. But no, the offensive numbers just are not there. Now, he was never a 25-goal scorer with regularity here in Tampa Bay, but he contributed more than he has with the New Jersey Devils. That being said, he helps every line he is on because there's a little bit of a go-go nature to this team. It's maybe more myth than truth. They're not a real high-scoring team, but there's this sense that with Jack Hughes and with Nico Hischier and Jesper Bratt and Timo Meier and some guys on the back, Dougie Hamilton, Luke Hughes, go, go, go. No, they're going to Tom Fitzgerald, the general manager, has said we're going to build from the back out, which is why he has reconstructed the goaltending situation and the defense over the last couple of summers. But what I'm saying in a long-winded way, I am Irish, is that you can depend on Andre Plot, and he gives some of those go-go guys a chance to go, knowing that defensively, he'll take care of business. I think he's in a better spot though now, lower in the lineup. As much as he did all those things alongside Jack Hughes, I think he's more a third line guy now, and he has helped round out the lineup 1 through 9 certainly. And as the fourth line contributes, things look good.
Matt, we just saw the Canucks on Sunday, and we saw Quinn Hughes, who had 4 assists in that game, and I think he's correctly regarded as one of the best overall defensemen in the NHL and certainly one of the best offensive defensemen in the NHL. We know about Jack's resume. Luke is the youngest, and he's the newest relative to his brothers to the NHL. He's already had an impact. I love watching this guy play. For a big man who can skate like he can skate, I'm just wondering, right now, he's probably considered the third best Hughes brother, fairly or unfairly. Where do you see his ceiling as he moves through his career?
And that might be his ceiling, and that's not a knock on Luke because those brothers are pretty darn good. So he might not be better than Quinn, and obviously a different position from Jack. So, but all the skills are there. He is bigger than his two brothers. He's well over 6 foot and he's long and lean. I think he's still learning the game. I think there is enormous pressure on him. I think the league has learned him a little bit, so now he's got to respond in kind. And what's he going to do differently? Offensively, he finally got on track against Washington on Saturday, scored his first goal. So we'll see what that does because he views himself, rightly so, in the organization and people in hockey as an offensive defenseman. And if you're not scoring, even though the coach will say, hey, we like what you're doing defensively, and Sheldon Keefe has been effusive in his praise about the strides that Luke has made defensively, you're still looking at that 0 under the goals column and going, what's wrong here? And you fight it a little bit. So hopefully that provides a bit of a spark for him. But, his ceiling is very high. Quinn's rather unique, to say the least, in what he does in Vancouver. Can Luke get there? Yeah, he'll get close, but Quinn might be the better defensive brother when it's all said and done. But, the Devils have a gem, and that family is incredible. I don't know what was in the water. I mean, I know that, I know the bloodlines. Mom was a great athlete. Jim, the dad, that's Ellen. Jim, the dad, played overseas. So I guess it's in the DNA, but, man, are they good. It's fun to watch Luke and Jack, although we won't see him tonight.
Quick follow-up, Matt. So, I don't know if you've asked either brother, like you said, it's in the genes. Did they get skating tutelage when they were kids? And if so, from which parent or both? And how much of that, because all 3 brothers can skate tremendously well. So is this nature versus nurture? How much of it is just God-given? How much of it was their upbringing?
Yeah, nature and nurture, I think it is, Dave. First off, they're a hockey family, right? And mom and dad were hockey people. So I think it was natural that their children were going to gravitate toward that sport. But when it became apparent early that they had special skills, the parents were invested and they did get skating instruction, and they were given the right way, so to speak. The one thing I will say about the 3 brothers, man, they are as down to earth for superstars as you can imagine. And that's a credit to the parents who kind of kept all that intact. I didn't see Jim and Ellen in the youth rinks as their kids were playing, but I can't imagine that they were at the back, screaming at the refs, screaming at the other team, like some of the horror stories that we hear of other youth parents. I think they had their heads on straight, and they made sure their boys were very, very understanding about, all right, yeah, you've got some gifts, you've got to develop them, but be humble along the way, and that'll serve you well. So that's one of the things that I've noticed. The parents did a great job. But, yeah, I mean, definitely in the bloodlines. And definitely they were given the proper way. And, and Jim grew up, never mind as a player and playing Europe, but then he was in the National Hockey League as either a scout or a coach. I mean, he was involved in the sport. So I think growing up around the sport, guys, if you find a player who grew up around the sport, he just acts differently. He kind of gets it. He's not in awe of a lot of the surroundings. It's just a little different from someone who kind of comes out of left field, so to speak. So, good for the parents. They did a great job.
Matt, you talked about Jack there momentarily. I mean, freak injury, of course. I'm not asking you about the injury itself, but how do they navigate the waters with such an impactful player out of the lineup for an extended period of time?
Yeah, the one thing that I don't like what coaches say is, well, it's next man up. Well, yeah, that's true, but you're taking a point-per-game guy out of your lineup. It's not easy. And as Sheldon said yesterday, there's only so much you can ask the other guys, particularly Nico Hischier, to do, because his work defensively has been absolutely spectacular to watch, and he's out there in all the tough situations. So can you ask him, well, now you got to play an extra 3 or 4 minutes and take some of Jack's work and incorporate it into your own? So no, the answer is no. Dawson Mercer is the obvious choice. He moves to center line center. It's his natural position, though he's done very well on the wing this year, and that may ultimately be where he plays the rest of his career. But there's going to have to be some of that extra scoring. That goes back to the 5-on-5, which they haven't gotten on a regular basis. So I think you'll see some players coming back. Connor Brown traveled with the team. Hopefully he plays tonight. The lineup is still to be determined. Sheldon just said it's a matter of, we think the guys who traveled with us who've been hurt will play, but let's see, game time decision. Everyone will skate. But if Connor Brown comes back, that adds some offense. Arseny Gritsuk has been a very pleasant surprise as he gets a more significant role. He hopefully can contribute offensively as well. I mean, he's got 4 goals, but his smarts and his skating, and now as he moves from third line, second line, dropping up and down, he'll move to first line, and I think he'll benefit from that, as will the team. So it is kind of all hands on deck, but yeah, it's a big hole. The good news is it's not for the rest of the year. 8 weeks from the surgery, which was Saturday, is the timeline for his return. That takes you into early January, plenty of runway after that. And so is it a matter of holding serve? Somewhat, but I don't think they want to just kind of stay where they're at, and I think they want to keep some pressure on Carolina and maybe win the division when it's all said and done. So I think that's their ultimate goal. They're not putting their heads down. It's a long, complicated way of saying going to be a lot of people to help, but It's not next man up. He's too good to say next man up.
Last one for me, Matt. I want to ask you about Nico Hischier, because you had talked about kind of the weight of expectations with Palat with the contract. There comes with being the number 1 overall pick a ton of expectations, particularly when you see other number 1 picks that were taken around you become iconic superstars like Connor McDavid or Austin Matthews. Hischier has really turned into quite a valuable player for you guys, though, hasn't he? Both in terms of, like, he's usually among the league leaders in faceoffs taken, and he wins a lot of them. You mentioned his defensive prowess. Like, has he turned into the player I think the Devils hoped he would be when they drafted him first overall?
I think so. I think when you're drafted that high, the expectations are lots of offense and, some defense and all those good things. He's going to be more of a defensive-oriented guy. He had a career high in goals last year with 35. He's off to a slow start offensively this year. Barring an incredible run, he's not going to match 35, and he may not get to 30. But he has been everything that the Devils would really have wanted in a number 1 guy. They knew that they were getting a mature individual, team-oriented guy, more worried about wins than individual numbers, and the numbers have been there, but he's just never going to be a point-per-game person. I think one of the things that we make a mistake with is thinking all number one overall picks are equal, and they're just not. And the Devils did not draft Connor McDavid. The Devils did not draft Austin Matthews. They did not draft even a Matthew Schaefer, who for the New York Islanders has been a game changer. But they drafted an incredibly talented player who can score, can defend, and is a Selke guy in terms of conversation. So yeah, they're more than happy with him. I think we all would like to see a few more goals, and maybe they'll come starting tonight. Who knows? But that's not his responsibility. Even on the road, he'll be out there as best as they can get the matchups favoring against Kucherov. That's just the way he is, and that's his role, and he's done it sublimely.
Matt, last question, just in general. What do you make of the Eastern Conference 22 games in?
Crazy, right? I mean, is Buffalo out of it? They're in last place, and you'd say based on their history, it's going to be another year without the playoffs. But what are they, 4 points out of a postseason berth early? I think that, and my partner Chico Resch concurs, he's been pushing this for a while now, that the old Thanksgiving date, and that's changed over the last few years, but it may not even be as many teams that are in Thanksgiving will be in by the end. I think it's just going to be a race to the end. Why is it parity is fully here? I don't know. Is it the injuries that all the teams seem to be going through, and some have survived them, and while others have struggled? I don't know either, and maybe in the end there'll be a separation of the wheat and the chaff, so to speak, but wow, I mean, each night it's hard. I like it, though, by the way. Now, listen, Tampa Bay is going to, I believe, find its rightful place in a playoff spot. They're playing much better as of late. Florida should, as they get Tkachuk back. It'll be a long time before Barkov comes back, but their pedigree suggests they'll climb up. Will Boston stay there in the Atlantic? In Atlantic, I don't know, but it's good to see some of the have-nots over the last few years knocking on the door. The Islanders have been a surprise. Maybe Detroit finally figures it out. That's good. So I love it. I love it. It makes for an exciting night each and every night in the rink.
Well, Matt, we appreciate it, and we'll see you at the rink here in a little bit, and have fun at the game tonight.
Thank you, Matt. Thanks for the invite.
You got it. All right, Matt Loughlin joining us there, giving us an update on those Devils.
Yeah. They're an interesting
Hughes brothers.
team. Yeah, they are an interesting team. They've been great at home, 7-0-1. They played more road games than they played home games. So they've lost four. Their four regulation losses have all come on the road. But they lost on opening night right before they came to Tampa and beat the Lightning 5-3. So that was one of their losses at Carolina. Then they went on a 4-game road trip out west. They lost 3 of the 4 on the trip. They lost to Colorado, and they lost 2 of the 3 games they played in California. That's been it. So they've had a very, very impressive year, and they've done it without Evgeny Dadonov. You didn't even mention him. He got hurt in the first game. He hasn't played since. I didn't know that Connor Brown might be coming back, but he had a couple of goals in the first meeting between the teams at Benchmark International Arena back on whatever it was, October 11th. They've been without Hamilton for a while. Pesce is on long-term injury. We mentioned Jack Hughes.
Yeah.
I mean, these are significant guys that you're pulling out of the lineup. I understand Hughes has only missed 1 game so far, but they're just kind of charging right along, even though their 5-on-5 numbers are not where you would expect them to be for a team that only has 4 regulation losses. They've done well in overtime too. I think they've played 6 games that have gone past regulation. They've won 5 of them. That's the other part that goes into this standing situation. And we've had a lot of overtime games in the East for those teams that are all bunched together. So you get overtime games, you're going to have bunched up standings. Unless you're going to change the point setup, which, I mean, that's never really gained a foothold. And I'm not sure how much it would actually make a difference, but you could award 3 points for a win in regulation, 2 points for a win in overtime in the shootout, and then the 1 point for the loss. So you would reward teams for winning in regulation more than in overtime. I don't think there's an appetite for that from what I've heard, because I wouldn't even say it's been bandied about. Like whenever it's kind of tried to pop its head out from like a molehill, like the Board of Governors is like, no, you hear that it just gets completely dismissed. So this is the system we have, and if we're going to keep having close games, we're going to keep having a bunched up standing situation, which means that for every team, you have to avoid regulation losses best you can, which is something we talk about a lot on the show.
Getting good goaltending. I mean, at least
yeah,
from a wins
that'll help
perspective.
you get points too. You know,
What's interesting is that Allen and Markstrom. I don't know. Is there another tandem out there that 35 and over? Both of those guys.
Yeah,
that's older goaltenders.
Allen's kind of found a little renaissance here though. I think he's been in New Jersey for this is his
years
third
now.
year. Yeah. I mean, he's played a lot for a guy that we might think of as a backup.
Yeah.
I mean, he played a lot when he was in Montreal. I don't know if that was due to injuries or what.
I mean, he's been a starter for a decent amount of his career.
Markstrom is now their guy, but Markstrom was hurt and missed a handful of games earlier in the year, so Allen's actually played more than Markstrom at this point. I think we're going to see Markstrom tonight based on the fact Allen played the last game, but we'll see.
It's just the age stood out, because usually you have somebody, might be, 28, 29 is your guy if they're in the prime of their career, and then maybe you have an older backup. Maybe it's, I mean, it just, they've got some experience there.
Well, they hitched their wagon to Markstrom. Actually, where is he? So he's a 90 birthday in January. So he's going to be 36 in January. You're right. I mean, that's not a spring chicken for a goalie, but he's not 39 either. So he's probably, well positioned to be their guy for the next several years. And then who knows what they've got in their system. That's not something that I would, normally be looking at. So maybe some of the fans can tell us. What I will tell you, though, Greg, the first meeting between the teams and the Lightning had a much different roster look, even understanding they're missing some guys now due to injury.
Yeah.
But think of the guys that were up for that second game that are no longer up, whether it's Chafee and Geeky, guys who are injured, etc. The Devils came in. They jumped out to a 3-0 first period lead. They won the game in the first period. Shots in the first period were 17-2, New Jersey. I think they finished I guess I can look it up. It was 31-18 or something like that. So the Lightning were fairly level in the second and third, but they were playing catch-up. That was the game where they made a 3-0 deficit 3-2, the Lightning did in the second, and then Bratt scored that shorthanded goal in the third period. Where Kucherov had a turnover, and that made it 4-2, and then they made it 5-2. The Lightning scored late to set the final at 5-3. But the Bratt shorthanded goal was probably the key play in the game because the Lightning had a power play down 3-2. But in some ways, they lost the game in the first period. When you get outshot 17-2, we were talking about the Vancouver game. Vancouver got dominated in the first period by the Lightning, but the game was only 1-0. Then the Lightning made it 2-0 early in the second. You put 3 in the first period, though. That's giving you a cushion so if the other team makes a push, as the Lightning did in the second period, you can still hold on to the lead. That really worked to the Devils' advantage. So needless to say, the Lightning are going to need to play a whole heck of a lot better in this meeting than they did in the first meeting against New Jersey. Understanding both teams are dealing with more injuries, we'll say, than what they had in the first meeting.
That's fair. It's a good team they're facing tonight.
It is a good team, even without Jack Hughes.
Tonight, enjoy some Reef Rum, smooth, versatile, and now pouring at Benchmark International Arena. Order a Tropical Wave or a Lightning Mule, and taste why fans are switching. Reef Rum is a premium craft Florida local rum built on authenticity, quality, and easy drinkability. Ask for Reef Rum by name. Go Bolts! Partner, do we want to get into some questions, or do you have any?
Yes. Well, I just wanted to say, as I looked down at my sheet, Nick Paul, I wrote down because I didn't know that he wasn't coming back because he's close. He's 1 point away from 200, so it's not tonight, I don't think, because otherwise we would have heard that he's coming in, right?
Right.
I mean, I'm making a little bit of a leap here, but we heard that Cirelli and James ran, not that Paul was in. So one more game at least for Nick Paul. But his return will be a welcome addition for sure.
That's going to be a huge one.
Yeah.
Because then really the lineup can start to maybe get to where you want it to be.
Right.
And through all of this, look, you found some depth, even more so. When we talked about the big line, but we also have talked about, Gergensons and Gord and Holmberg. I mean, it's you really have found your bottom six, probably even more so, of guys who can fill that role. And then James comes in, and he's basically shown that he can do what he wants to do.
He's going to wear the full shield, and I don't know, I think John Cooper said it yesterday, like he's used to it having played college hockey, which is what they wear in college. So this is not going to be maybe if he'd been in the NHL for 5 years, going back to the full shield would be more of an adjustment, but I mean, that's what he wore in college, so.
It's good to know, as they say. Jack says, just a note to say I look forward to the show every day during my corporate job on the West Coast. Great way to kick off 9 a.m. If my job sees this. No,
yeah, we don't tell. You told, though.
Yeah.
I don't know if people on the West Coast are dialed in, figuratively speaking, to Power Lunch. But
Dallas in. Makes the day go by faster, please. Let's get it going. StreamYard wanted a few words there. Greg S. says, thanks for work, guys. Great show.
StreamYard is piping
Is listening.
in?
It is listening.
Yeah.
I say, keep going, guys. Keep talking. Mytho says James back in the lineup tonight, and Sorelli is a GTD.
Yeah, game time decision.
Yeah.
It sounded from Rob Zettler, though, that they were both in. So
Greg says, get two guys, lose another. We will eventually be back at full strength. LOL.
Yeah, and I said this earlier in this little stretch of time where the Lightning are having like 4, 5, 6 guys out due to injury. None of the injuries appear to be significant.
Yeah.
Like Jack Hughes out 2 months.
Right.
We're gonna have to wait and see, though. I mean, we haven't seen McDonough since he blocked the shot, right? We haven't seen Holmberg since Wilson checked him. So even though they are kind of in the day-to-day or just outside day-to-day status, you know, they've missed. The games are piling up now that they've missed.
It's true. Absolutely true. Garrett says, how about just swapping Ole and Pointer on the power play unit number 1? I think that might add a spark to the top unit. Point has played there before. Ollie prefers the bumper to begin with. I agree with on that. I do think he's more comfortable there.
When we were talking about the power play in yesterday's show, I did mention that. So it's not like I came up with the idea. I mean, we saw them swap early in training camp when they were practicing the power play. So yes, and Point has played the left circle before. But Point's historically, Point has been most effective on the power play in the bumper. So I think to this point, the Lightning have been hesitant to move him out of there.
I would tend to agree with that. You don't move the guy who's a 40-goal scorer. That's my take. My other take is you probably don't move Nikita Kucherov around too much on the power play.
Mm-hmm.
Those guys are mainstays. You adjust to them. I understand there are circumstances that you have to change. Those are two players I do not. If you want to start getting into the shots from the point not getting through, I can meet you halfway. I think it's easier said than done.
Or having more of a shooting mentality. Or as Anthony has talked about, getting Gensel in front of the net as opposed to the goal line extended.
Listen, for me, Point, Kucherov, and Gensel, not only being on the first power play unit, but where they line up, are things I probably don't tinker with. Clearly, if they want Bjorkstrand to be part of that first power play unit, he is going to have to be on the opposite side of Kucherov, bombing away one-timers. I don't think you move out Braden Point to get Bjorkstrand comfortable, because I don't know if you're trading up in that instance.
But I will offer this as a not a counter really, but just as another point that for Braden Point, he has no room in the bumper, none. So maybe moving him to the left circle actually gives him a little bit more room. Less of a fortuitous shooting angle, but he's played there before, as the fan mentioned. So maybe you're doing it to change the look of the power play a little bit and help Braden Point.
You know,
the other thing that would help Braden Point is, I mean, Phil has talked about him having a little bit more movement in the bumper, sliding to maybe some dead spots so he can maybe get himself open. But I mean, you watched how the penalty kill units are paying attention to him. I mean, it's like a wide receiver in football getting double teamed. Like the wide receiver is going to have a hard time getting open if he's double teamed. It means somebody else is available. And then when you start going to those other areas, that might open up the receiver who's being double teamed. That's kind of, I think, what the Lightning have tried to do. But until they start scoring with regularity, it's just not going to really slot into place.
So I agree with you, by the way. I think it's easier to collapse on that bumper position, particularly when you don't have a consistent scoring threat opposite Kucherov with the one-timer, cross ice, like we saw with Stamkos. Mm-hmm. Which leads me to believe maybe instead of trying to force it that way or going to the point, I think, does it make some sense to go through Gensel a little bit more? Near the goal line, below the goal line? Because we've talked about his passing in addition to his finishing ability. You might have to manufacture some offense that way instead of Kucherov trying to go to the point or cross ice. Are those three almost playing a little bit attack that way with Kucherov, Gensel, and Point, and see if you can get some offense that way? Because who's been probably their most consistent offensive player this year? I think it's been Gensel.
Yeah.
And I think Gensel is crafty enough with his decision-making that I would be comfortable if it went Kuch to Gensel back to Point or back to Kucherov before I start going cross-ice and saying, well, we need to figure out who's going to be doing the one-timers on that opposite side of Kucherov, because I'm not sure you have a great option at this point. Bjorkstrand may get there. I just think right now it's not working. And until Hedman, gets back and is bombs away and you're getting those shots consistently on net, maybe you work with what you have that's going pretty well, and maybe those three guys almost operating in unison is the way to generate some offense on your power play. It's just something to think about.
The Gensel option is an option if he's not standing in front of the net. If he's making himself open to Kucherov as a passing option,
yes,
with the goal line extended.
Goal line extended is what I'm saying.
So when we had the opening night game, Ryan Malone said, I'd love to see Gensel walk the goal line and just take it to the net, which he could do. That is a wrinkle that the penalty kill does not want to see. You don't want to see Gensel have an open path to the net. So he could do that. The other thing is a lefty from that goal line extended, let's just say to the left of the goalie so the fans can imagine what I'm saying. Really, as a lefty in that spot, Gensel has the ability to make a pass to any of the four other players on the ice. If he's going to give it back to Kucherov, he kind of has to open up a little bit, and usually he just bumps it back to Kucherov. But if he's going to point, if he's going to the point to Radish or Hedman, or if he's going to the other circle, Bjorkstrand, he can kind of sell that. Like, it basically is like, how long is the puck going to stay in his stick blade? Sure. Depends where he's going to go with it. Yeah. So he can have some deception as far as where he's going to go with that puck, if he's not just bumping it back to Kucherov. But look, I mean, I'm sure explored this, and again, at the risk of repeating myself and probably you as well, because you said this as along with me, execution. If you can move the puck quickly, and I don't think it certainly matters if you're facing an aggressive kill, but even against a more passive kill that's looking to just protect the house, quick puck movement will open things up.
Yeah.
But it's hard to move the puck quickly and accurately on the tape where the next guy can do something also quickly. When you are missing your mojo, cue Austin Powers, please. But when you are missing your mojo, it is harder to do that. That's why this thing is like stuck in mud right now. They need to score to get going. They need to get going to score. And I don't think it matters as much where the players are on the ice. I know the fans are like, do this, do that, or some of the fans have been like, they just need to execute better. But, it's understandable that fans would be like, this isn't working. Let's try this. Let's move this person here. And we've talked about that too. I keep coming back, though, to the fact that Nikita Kucherov has been one of the best power play players, facilitators especially, in the NHL for a decade at that spot. Yes, a lot of the damage that he was able to do came in a power play where you had Steven Stamkos as a weapon on the other side. But there were points where Stamkos was injured, right? I mean, the Lightning's power play did pretty well in the bubble without Stamkos. Stamkos is at other points during his Lightning tenure when he was out of the lineup. So it's just not happening for them right now. But the pedigree of the players on the ice would tell you that it can happen. That's why I brought up the Penguins the other show. Because, unfortunately, sometimes it just doesn't click into place. Sometimes you almost need a complete restart. But it's not like Sidney Crosby forgot how to make plays, or Malkin forgot how to make plays, or Erik Karlsson forgot how to make plays, right?
I think in that
they just had a horrible year, and it was like this enormous burden every time they got a power play, and it's starting to feel like that a little bit for the Lightning. So hopefully they can snap out of it.
I do think, though, players fit different positions better. For instance, I'm not sure if you go back and ask the Penguins, which we're not, but I'll tell you.
The year they struggled, you mean?
Not having a Phil Kessel as somebody who also was a facilitator, actually where Stamkos would line up, was a big deal. And then you had guys underperforming, so that there's no doubt. And
but Kessel had been off the team for a number of years at that point.
For a while. But I think when it was humming, when you looked at all those players, because you could take him off and say, okay, well, Greg, there's still 4 Hall of Famers around that power play. I do think the power play in many ways is probably more about being in sync as well, because that is such a timing aspect of the NHL, is that if one thing, I mean, it's a process to get it's a timing thing to get the puck in.
Right.
When that gets thrown off, you're wasting 20 seconds just to get everybody set up and in sync again. So I think you're right. It is execution, probably more so on the power play than anything else, because there is a timing component to how that thing operates. And when something is off, it really can throw the whole unit off, which is why you hear a lot of people say, hey, the second power play unit looks a little more together than the first. It's because, well, the second power play unit, A, might not be out there as much, but B, they're keeping it pretty simple. So maybe there's not a lot of fanciness to it. You're just kind of ripping it from the point and crashing the net. I'm not saying that's the approach the first unit takes, because they're unique because of their skill set. But that skill set also has a lot of timing involved. And if that timing is off, that unit is a bit off. So I think we need to keep that in mind. The other thing, and I want to get to some more questions. I just think also, too, that Stamkos was a big part of the power play. Of course he was. But even his game, there was a timing to it. It was setting him up for that one-timer. And him ripping it with precision. That all took precision and timing and execution. You take that out, you got to replace that, and it's hard to do, which is why I think the Gensel, Point, Kucherov, for me, might be something I'd like to see a little bit more until the other two get a little more comfortable and in sync with the rest of the unit. That being said, that's all I'm going to say about it. Let's hope it begins tonight, because I do think there are elements to that power play that can really be beneficial to this team. Jack says this show versus the Block Party allows us fans to engage in real time, which is 100% awesome, which partners what you said. You know, it's we're live.
Look, most podcasts are not live.
That is correct.
We are both. We are live, but also people can consume us on demand.
And we take your questions, too. I mean, that's the other thing about podcasts. Some podcasts, if you email them in, they can. But this is real-time stuff right now that we're going for. And as Lee says, is Paul making his season debut?
Well, again, if you're watching the video stream, I was not at the skate. So I'm trying to practice some self-care and knock this cold out sooner rather than later. It's not going to prevent me from calling the game. And I was actually battling it the last 2 games. So I'm just trying to be smart about it. So I wasn't at the skate. All I can tell you is what was reported,
sources,
which is Rob Zettler said Cirelli and James are in. Crozier is on IR.
Yeah.
So that would lead me to believe that Paul is not in, nor Hedman, and McDonough's still on IR. So, I mean, they didn't activate him, but they did activate James. So when you're on IR,
Yeah.
if you're activated, that probably means that you're ready to come in. They're not going to activate you if they're not going to fill a roster spot if you're already on IR. So James got activated. He's in. Sorelli wasn't on IR, but he was close. He's in. Crozier is now on IR. So we're going to have still some moving parts here. It's possible some players got banged up and are not being put on IR. And nobody asked Rob Zettler specifically about, I had mentioned Chernak, went down the tunnel on Sunday's game in the second period, but finished the game, did media afterward. We'll see. It's possible the Lightning are going to have one extra and scratch that player because you called up 2 defensemen.
You did.
And you only sent down Kachuk, right?
Correct.
I mean, if you do the math, basically, if you're adding Sorelli and James and Carlile and Santini, taking into account that you're removing Crozier, you sent Kachuk down, you are going to have 1 extra player. I know I just said 4 added, 2 not, but that's the way it should be. So
Steve says our listeners can join a live taping of the block party next Tuesday, the 25th.
Nice.
Limited tables remain. Check out our Twitter feed for the link. So make sure that you please do that. Thomas says, with so many teams getting
healthy, injured, maybe.
Can you go through each team in the Atlantic besides the Bolts and say if you think they are for real or not?
Well, Thomas, I have not seen every team.
Should we wait for maybe do that tomorrow?
Yeah.
Because I feel like we could probably dedicate a show to
Yeah, but let me just take a quick look at the standings because I think I'm going to go by conference. So in the East, right now there are 2 teams that are under Hockey 500, and they're only under Hockey 500 by a game, Toronto and Buffalo. So we're just looking at points. Toronto and Buffalo have 18 points. If we take out the top 2 teams, New Jersey and Carolina, just to illustrate how tight it is, because Carolina and New Jersey have done very well. They've done better than any other team in terms of kind of jumping out of the gates well. If we start with the 3rd team, Pittsburgh, which is 3rd because fewer games played, the difference between the 3rd team out of 16 in the East and the last team is only 6 points. That's crazy. That's crazy tight. And it's actually maybe even tighter than that because some of those teams have games in hand where they can make up, like they can even get closer to the top, right? So I don't know which teams, as I've said, are punching above their weight class. I mean, generally speaking, if a team has had a long losing streak, that probably means that something was off. Mm-hmm. And the teams that tend to do the best over the long haul tend to avoid those. But who knows? I mean, I'm really talking about the Bruins. They've been very streaky this year. They've had long winning streaks, and they've had long regulation losing streaks. But it hasn't hurt them to this point. I mean, they're right in that, thick of the race. For the Lightning, if you want to look at the playoff pace metric, Lightning have 20 points through 18 games. Playoff pace would get them to 24 points after 20 games, which would mean they need to win tonight and win against Edmonton on Thursday. I don't know if that's going to happen. They were 2 points off the pace after 10 games. If they win one of the next 2, let's just call this second 10-game segment a push, which is fine. Like, if you can do 12 and 10, that's fine. At some point, though, if they want to get to playoff pace, they're going to have to make up those 2 points. We'll see how they do tonight. These are 2 tough games. I know the Devils are shorthanded in terms of, depleted roster, but they didn't get to 27 points by fluke to this point this year.
No, that's fair. Let's get to Alan. He says, in previous shows, Greg has stated Point will figure it out, and I agree with him. However, what is the timetable of figuring it out? 20 games? 40 games? How long until changes have to be made? I'll say, let me touch on that first. And then feel free to jump in, partner. I this could even be an off year for Braden Point. I still think you have to throw him out there continuing to do what he's doing. I don't think you're going to sit there and scratch him or demote him. I'm not suggesting Allen is suggesting that, but you get paid a lot of money to be a star player and to figure it out. You don't do that by sitting or playing a lesser role. That's my belief. I would say the same thing about Ovechkin in his prime, Crosby in his prime, Kucherov in his prime, which he still is in. I don't think lessening the burden for an extended period of time gets these guys on track. I think you look at this and you say, at the end of the year, if Braden Point doesn't have a typical Braden Point year, then I think you just say it might have been an off year and I have to take my chances because there's been enough evidence over the course of his career beyond his rookie year early on where this guy has been an elite player at this level. And you usually give the elite players the benefit of the doubt. So, Alan, that would be my opinion. I give him as long as he can. And if it ends up being an off year for him, that's unfortunate, and you say, okay, I mean, that's one off year out of how many, and eventually he gets back to being Braden Point, the dominant figure. I think that's going to happen this year, but I don't have a crystal ball.
Yeah.
I don't know.
It's unknown when you're in a slump. It's unknown when the slump is going to end. Now, I'll say this. Is this some kind of like career trajectory thing? The reason that you would have a concern about, let's just state it plainly, the tread coming off the tires, usually one of two things. It's coming back after an injury, a significant injury, or an accumulation of injuries, let's say, plus age. Neither of those is true for Braden Point. He's 29 years old.
Right.
He has had injuries in his career, but no recent injuries. And we can see that he's skating like his greatest asset. He is still skating really well. So this to me is a slump. But for Allen to say like, well, what's the timetable when changes need to be made? I mean, first of all, that's up to the coaches. Yeah. But I'm inclined to agree with you, Greg, that you give Braden Point has earned the right to work himself out of this thing. But I think it's temporary.
I do. And
he's not 37 years old.
So that's what I was going to say.
He's not coming off like major hip surgery. I mean, he's had that actually before. But pick an injury where you're like, this is going to affect him in ways that he can't do what he has done previously. This is not that situation.
I think you hit the nail on the head there. If this was like Braden Point at 36 or 35, 34, I mean, Braden Point's not even 30 yet, right?
Yeah, he's 29.
Okay, so like he's in the prime of his career. If this was like a 34-year-old Braden Point and we saw these numbers, I think we'd probably all sit here and say, I'm going to give a little credence to, is he hitting a wall in his career? And is this a reflection of what we're going to see moving forward because of the age and the mileage that's been put on his body? So I think age and a significant injury. Like I'm sure they're looking at Landeskog, right, in Colorado.
Yeah.
And they're probably monitoring, like, what is he? You know, you want to have him come back. And
that's a great example because he missed 3 years.
3 years. So, I mean, what do you know? So you can excuse Colorado if they're looking at that and saying, I don't know if he's the same guy 3 years ago. And that's fine because it was an injury. Mm-hmm. Braden Point.
And they're using him accordingly. His minutes are down.
Yes. So that's a fair point. I just think with Point, there are too many things that are trending in his way that would lead us to believe he is going to get back on track in terms of the age and, his ability. Some people have asked, is he dealing with an injury? Clearly not one that is preventing him from playing.
Yeah.
If he is, and this continues to go on where maybe the production isn't what you want it to be, then it may make sense for the coaching staff to say, why don't we sit him for a couple of games just to get healthy? We have seen that over the years with teams that have done that.
I would be surprised. Honestly, Greg, I'd be surprised if they did even that. But you may be right.
Yeah, that's fair. I mean, look, if you're going to do it, this would be the year. You got some depth. For a game or two, you could sit there and say, all right, do we want to put James on the first line? Do we want to do this? I'm not saying that's the case. I'm just saying if players get dinged up and it's not enough to have them sidelined for an extended period of time, but it's enough that their production is a little bit off, then that's just information the coaching staff's taking in and saying, okay, do we need to pull the trigger here and just let him rest for a game or two?
So this is probably an unfair comparison, but Braden Point did not win the Conn Smythe Trophy in 2020 or 2021, but he could have.
Yeah.
Think about the overtime goals that he scored in the bubble. What did he have, like 9-game goal streak in 2021? He was such a critical part to the Lightning's cup runs in 2020 and 2021. And he did it offensively, and he did it defensively. He was contributing in all sorts of ways. Right now, his production has dried up. And as I have said, I don't even think that he's really getting as many looks as he probably would want. That is going to need to change. And ultimately, if he's stuck under a point per game, let's say, that's what's going to be glaring. But also what is glaring is the worst minus on the team. He's minus 12.
Yeah, for sure.
And so I would say, so he had an assist on the Kucherov goal. He was +1 with an assist going into the third period of the Vancouver game, and he finished -1, -2 in that game. Yeah, so he must have been on the ice. I think he was out on the ice for the empty netter. But he was out on the ice for 2 of their goals in the third period, and the one that we talked about was the 3-2 goal scored by Linus Karlsson. And that is a play, like he even said, I got my stick lifted. That puck needed to get out. So I think there are all parts of his game right now that need to elevate, honestly. So if he starts becoming like completely buttoned up defensively, but is still struggling to score, he's probably still going to get a lot of attention in the way that you don't want him to get attention. Yeah. But if you're not scoring and you're not getting chances, then absolutely, like, you have to make sure that there are no issues from the red line back to your net. And unfortunately, it's kind of hard to hide from a -12 at this point.
That's a good point.
I mean, by far, it's the worst on the team. So, that's where, like, the plus-minus stat is kind of like, sometimes it's not completely your fault, and that's true. Sometimes it is your fault, more your fault. But when you are that much, if there's that much of a differential between you and most of the other people on your team, plus or minus, that stands out.
It does.
I think the next closest guy is Destu, -6. And he
had
took a -5. He had a -5 in one game. So if you pull that game out, he's basically, even or -1. So, Cooch was down where Point was. Cooch has been able to get a little bit closer. Cooch has benefited with they've scored empty net goals. He's been on the ice. He's gotten some pluses. But, that's where I would look at it. Like, if Braden is not getting the sorts of chances that we're used to seeing him get, that needs to change. But if it doesn't change, and it's going to take him a while to snap out of this, let's start seeing some evens and pluses, at the end of a game, not minuses.
Agreed. Partner, I'll catch you tonight.
Catch you tonight.
We'll be back at it tomorrow. All right. Appreciate it,
everybody.
And
we're live tomorrow, too.
We are live. We are live tomorrow too.
We'll recap the game tonight and take your questions as always. Thanks to Matt Loughlin too.
Yep, Matt Loughlin was great. We appreciate him. Thanks to Steve Versnick and all of you for listening. I am Greg Linnelli. You've been listening to Power Lunch on Lightning Radio.